Hi there, it's Kevin with the Rogue Market here. Instead of a market recap this week, because our Market Monday wasn't very relevant on card prices, was more about the Amazon direct sales through Wizards of the Coast. And it doesn't really, again, relevant for this channel. So you can definitely go check out that video and give your 2 cents on the topic. It was more of a passionate video because I do own a local game store and I think it will hit my bottom line. However, for this channel, we talk about market prices, card prices, and for this week, instead of the recap, I'm going to go over the guild kits. So what are guild kits? Guild kits are going to be released in sometime in November. I don't have the exact date up at hand here. And they have an MSRP of $20. So that is going to be very relevant. It seems like these are going to be more of a print to demand. I don't think these are going to be limited by any stretch of the imagination. And so you got to think of these of the supply of something like challenger decks. And that's going to be very relevant as we move forward through these guild kits. So what are contained in guild kits? It's 60 cards of a specific guild. There are various reprints throughout the history of the Ravnica sets, both old and new. And there are some good ones in here. The average price of these is around $30 of value, not expected value, because we know the contents of these decks. And so that is also extremely important when trying to gauge the price of where the singles in these sets are going to settle. So that is going to be the purpose of this video. We're going to analyze kind of the contents and which cards are going to get hit the most, and which ones have a decent chance of stabilizing or might be good buys down the road. Of course, if you have any contents of these cards, if you can sell them, you should sell them because everything is going to get hit quite substantially. Again, they have the MSRP of $20. In today's day and age of Magic, if this goes on Amazon, for example, it's going to be very, very low, a lower price than that. And people like me or other people that own game stores are going to be able to get these around the $10 to $11 mark. And so if the contents of these are more than the $11, it might just be easier for me to piece out those cards and sell them individually than try to deal with a bulky kit. So that has a lot to do in the secondary market now. You can look at challenger decks, even commander decks recently as a reference point that even if they print $100 worth of cards in something with MSRP of 25, all of the prices have to eventually go down to under the price of the sealed product. Otherwise, people are just going to piece them out and sell them. All right, so let's give our first analysis to the, this one is Izzet. So Izzet has some interesting things in it. It's got one of the more pricey cards in Shattering Spree. Shattering Spree was a recent spike. Shattering Spree has been going up at a nice trajectory for quite a while. If you actually look back all the way even from I'd say all the way from Kaladesh. This started going from 4 to 5 to 6, and then it had its real price increase between Hour of Devastation and Ixalan, and then had another massive price increase from Ixalan to Dominaria. However, from Dominaria forward, it already was starting to go down in price. The Shattering Spree sees a lot of play in Modern. However, there are other alternatives. For example, Burn usually doesn't like to run Shattering Spree. It has options to destroy an artifact and do damage. A lot of white decks that are both white and red prefer something like Wear and Tear because it's more versatile. And there are other decks that, like Black, might have Kolgan's Command that choose to run them over Shattering Spree. So it's definitely not something like Rest in Peace or Stony Silence that is the best of its class. It's just an option in its class. The reason why Shattering Spree, I think, was able to approach this sort of price is a uncommon from Guild Pack is basically like a mythic in this day and age. And so the supply is quite low, and if it has some sort of demand, it's going to have a $10 plus price tag. However, now with the reprinting, this is going to really bottom out the price of Shattering Spree, bring it definitely back down to earth. However, there's really nothing else in this guild kit that is able to maintain its price value. The Stitch in Time is the other card that has any sort of significant value in the Izzet. However, Stitch in Time also recently had a price spike and is also starting to plummet back down to reality, and it is mainly because Stitch in Time is used in the Battle Bond dual or partner between the Akon Eye of Chaos and the Zndrsplt Eye of Wisdom. It does see some play every now and again in just some blue-red Chaos decks in EDH. However, you can tell by the number of decks that 967 is definitely not something that is high demand in EDH. I do like the mechanic on Stitch in Time. It deals with flipping coins, so the more mechanics that come out in the future with the coin flip or getting something out of the coin flip, Stitch in Time is definitely going to go in those decks if it is blue and red, and that's what it's got going for it. However, I think that the price of Stitch in Time is way overinflated for a card that is going to be reprinted at such mass quantities. So I think this is the card that's going to get hit the hardest. If we say that the card value of this is going to equal $11 total, I think Shattering Spree is going to be the vast majority of the value. So Shattering Spree could stay at the $6 to $8 mark. I think it's going to go down slightly more. I don't think that there's going to be anything in this deck that's going to really have any sort of significant value. It's just going to be the sheer bulk of it that is going to hold the value. There are some interesting things in there. Each one of these guild kits contains 4 of the bounce lands and 2 of the signets. And these are cards that used to hold a decent portion of value. Like they'd be reprinted every year in Commander, and then they bottom out and then usually go back up, especially if you're a Dimir or a Zorius. However, this might be the straw that breaks the camel's back for the bounce lands and the signets, because they have been reprinted a ton in the past. I don't think there's been a year that's gone by when these haven't seen a printing somewhere. So we have master sets, we have commander sets, and a lot of times we even have supplemental products that will put out the signets. So even worst case scenario for the bounce lands, they're really starting to see printing in a lot of supplemental products. Some of them do have some high demand in Pauper, but I don't think that's going to be enough to outstretch their supply and have any sort of gains. A lot of the other problems with these decks, some of these targets have already been reprinted a lot. The Electromancer, for example, sees a heavy play in Modern. However, it's just had another reprinting in a master set, as well as now it's another supplemental product. Cards like Gutter Snipe have been reprinted a bunch, and Hypersonic Dragon, Izzet, the Firemind, the Djinn Illuminatus, all of these have had multiple printings in supplemental products. So Electricity is kind of nice too. I think that this could have used a Cyclonic Rift in the guild kit to really solidify the value. However, Cyclonic Rift and Shattering Spree are the only cards. Electrolyze, I would even put in that category. This has been printed into Oblivion as well. Are really the only heavy demand cards in this entire kit. If we look at the newly reprinted or newly printed cards, there also isn't anything to really get excited about. We have the Erratic Cyclops, which has some interesting abilities to it, but it's an unknown card. It probably is not worth its converted mana cost for its ability. And there's also the Firemind's Research. It's the same thing. That is an interesting card. However, we don't know the impact of it. So those are things to keep your eye on if they do see standard play. These are something that could slip back up, and maybe you want to get your copies since these are bottomed out because they have been spoiled in an upcoming product that is going to have a heavy supply. But however, I don't think that there's really anything that this guild kit has to offer. If we go on to the next one, we have the Golgari. Now, Golgari also is kind of in the same class that the Izzet is. We have Deathrite Shaman that is holding some value that is a little bit misleading. It was recently banned in the format that it did have demand. It does see some demand in Legacy, that's where it's banned in. And it's also banned in Modern. It does see some demand in Commander, but this is not going to be enough. There's not enough Commander demand to really hold the price of the Deathrite Shaman that already has a real market price around $2 because it's still reeling from the banning of the Legacy. So some of these other cards too, if we go down, Lot the Troll is already, I believe, in another supplemental product and has never really gained steam. So he's playing a few Commander decks and some Modern decks here and there. A lot of the dredge mechanic here, like the Stinkweed Imp, these are things that can eventually go back up if dredge. The problem with dredge is been pretty much outclassed by Hollow One recently in Modern, but you never know when dredge will get a new toy. I memed here. But Stinkweed Imp is something that you definitely, if you can get these for cheap, once the dust settles for like the 10 to 15 cent mark, that's probably a pretty good deal long term. These have real world value. They're easy to trade off. They're easy to, when people do build tier decks like Dredge, they're easy to get a real world value of them. So there's a big difference with like Stinkweed Imp that's showing if it goes down to 25 cents, and something like Shambling Shell. It does well. Shambling Shell is not even a good example too, because again, that's a dredge mechanic. But something like Slum Reaper. Slum Reaper doesn't have a real world value. It's just got a placeholder value. These are something that are you can easily get for nickels and things like that. They're hard to sell. So let's take a look at the other cards. The other card besides Deathrite Shaman that has any significant sort of value is Abrupt Decay. Abrupt Decay is in a lot of debate right now. It's been going down, and that's mainly because people are thinking Assassin's Trophy is just better than Abrupt Decay. But I would debate that the cannot be countered clause is something that is always going to be a meta choice. So if the blue decks, if the counter decks, the tempo decks actually come into favor, you might see those Juns and Abzens and Sultais favoring Abrupt Decay even over something like Assassin's Trophy, being able to know that they can stick a card that can get rid of the threat. So we're thinking like in past like Delver. Abrupt Decay was a great answer to something like Delver because it kills it and cannot be countered. Assassin's Trophy is something a lot of times that can just be, you know, spell snared, and that's that. So I like Abrupt Decay if this really bottoms it out. We're talking down to like the $1 mark. I think that's a good pickup, and I don't think that is too much of a stretch. Something does have to hold value to make this guild pack worthwhile, and I wouldn't be surprised if this is the one that just really gets hit the hardest, and nothing really has any sort of significant value except just, you know, your random demand from Rot Farms and signets and whatnot. We have the Deadbridge Chant, but if anyone's actually played this card in EDH, it seems very lackluster. It's very easily replaced by other cards that do very similar things. Putting the top 10 cards of your library into your graveyard for 6 mana and then getting a random card back is a very lackluster ability. So Deadbridge Chant hasn't had the greatest growth. From a mythic out of Dragon's Maze, you can see that the price trajectory has been pretty flat for quite some time. So it's increased here, but then flat, and then increased a little bit, then flat, flat, flat. This will probably be the nail in the coffin for Deadbridge Chant. This has the most to lose. I expect this to go $1 or even or under $1. The same with like Sisters of the Stone. This is low supply here, and Savra. Now Savra was getting interesting. It was a card that I was definitely thinking about speccing into until I realized it was in this set. So Savra has a really good pairing with like a Zoni and a few of the other cards that are coming out that deal with sacrificing creatures. So Commander, of course, if people do build a Zoni decks, which I'm thinking this is going to be the popular Commander out the gates, they're going to want a Savra. However, a lot of people are going to get their Zoni by this deck, and therefore are going to get the Savra. So I think the Savra is going to get crushed, and the $2 mark is going to go back down to the 50-cent mark and whatnot. So this is the one that I like the least. There are, again, some good pickups like the Dark Blast and the Abrupt Decay long term if these do bottom out. However, short term, this is a product that is going to devalue very, very, very quickly because nothing in it is something that has a chance to really stabilize in the short term. The next one is the Boros. Boros also has a price tag about the $36 mark. However, if you look at it, there aren't a lot of cards with demand. This is the one that I like the most so far because the Legion loyalty list, we are seeing 8-Whack have a comeback, or just goblins in general. It typically is a mainstay in those type of decks. You can see it did have a recent price spike. This card is a card that swings a lot. This card swings a lot online as well, the Legion Loyalist, because a lot of people forget about it because it doesn't seem to have like the greatest ability until you realize how relevant the Battalion ability is in Modern, with giving creatures trample. First Dragon can't be blocked by tokens. When cards like Lingering Souls or Young Pyromancer are the stability of a lot of decks for these hyper aggressive decks, or even like timely reinforcements. So you can see it does see a reasonable, and the reason why I think that a card like this does have these little price spikes is it becomes out of sight, out of mind. People forget about Legion Loyalist. It spikes back up when people are like, I need it, and then rinse and repeat. It is already starting to come back down to earth though, so this price spike was unwarranted here around the Masters 25, went from $5 to $12, back down to $8. Hasn't seen any sort of jumps back up, so you got to think that if we're going to follow this price trajectory of regular growth of what, about 70 cents per set, Yeah, we should be seeing something around the $8 mark right now anyway. So it's probably starting to flat off. However, this is a card that's this is going to be a supplemental product that does at least half the value of Legion Loyalist. I would say that the $3 mark is probably more reasonable for Legion Loyalist. Aurelia is another card that does see a lot of commander play and does have this is the type of card I really like, because you can see this nice, lovely increase. This is why I like commander. It doesn't raise any, it's never on anyone's radar. Like, there's not a buyout that then people go crazy with, and then this gets a bunch of people take this out of their collection and then flood the market with it. It's just a nice, slow growth. And for me, those are the easiest cards to sell and the easiest cards to guarantee that you get a profit off of. However, this is going to be a supplemental product that is going to at least half the value of this again, but I do like this one to hold its value the best, and I do like this one as the primary pickup when these cards do bottom out. I think there's enough demand eventually to start seeing this exact same tick up, unless of course they reprint again, but I highly doubt that once this does bottom out. So you're going to be looking for a bottom out, $2.50, $3, start picking them up, and then a year or two, you've probably made back $1.50, $2. If you have time to wait on a card like this, it's a great place to sink trade value. It's a great place, great target to sit on for those pretty reliable gains. All right, so we look at the rest of the cards in here. Razi, of course, and Fireman Angel are nothing special. Some of the other rares too, like Agris, no. Legion Warboss. This one's interesting because people think this is going to be a heavy player in Standard. This could be something that retains a lot of value, but is going to kind of be fixed on what the rest of the value of like Aurelia and Legion Loyalist is going to be. So Boros Guild Kit, I think, is the best so far. It also has Boros Charm and Lightning Helix. Both have a lot of demand. They both tend to get reprinted a lot. And so we had, recent reprintings within the last year of the Lightning Helix and the Boros Charm. But they do see a lot of demand in Modern. And they can be those type of cards if they don't get reprinted in a year. That's the year they do creep up. All right, so then we go on to the Selesnya. Selesnya has the highest price point, but it's also fixed on one card. So if you actually look at it, a lot of these had multiple cards above $4. This has one, possibly two cards over the $4 mark. It's also got a lot of cards that, again, have low supply that are on the $2 mark that are going to get crushed. This is all about privileged position. And this is all the way back from Ravnica, has never had a reprinting. Now we know why it wasn't in the Commander deck. A lot of people were very upset this wasn't in the Bant Commander Enchantment Matters deck, and it did really shoot up because of it. Went from $18 to the $27 mark. This one I think is your best bet for holding the value of a set. So I could see this one going down to the $10 mark and holding the entire value of the Selesnya deck, everything else getting crushed. So unfortunately, this was a spec card of mine. I have a lot of Trostanis because I was just waiting for the day when this would continue to go up. Like the whole problem is Return to Ravnica is one of the sets that was the most printed of all time. So everything across the board has had a hard time. Even look at Shocklands. They've had a hard time really gaining value because you can still get Return to Ravnica boxes sealed for less than $100. They're still out there on the market. And so cards like Trostani, even though it sees a lot of commander play, has never been able to gain any substantial amount of growth. So this is a card that I was picking up at the $2 range. Unfortunately, I didn't able to cash out of the Trostani, and now I think it's going to get crushed from the reprinting in this set. So that's the bad news for Trostani. The good news for Privileged Position is I don't see this one going very low. Out of everything that's going to hold its price, it's going to be the Privileged Position. Everything else in here, the newly printed cards, are also very lackluster compared to stuff. We got some rares that are already around the 50-cent mark that are very, very filler. And even the Venerated Loxodon is a big unknown with how well the Convoke and the +1 counters work with it. I kind of like this card for token-based decks, but there might just be better. This is traditionally yeah, easily something that can be done with like a servo exhibition if we do have a lot of token-based spells can be convoked out and make the convoke stuff bigger. You'll have to wait and see this. I actually like this card a lot. So this might be a sleeper if it does completely get crushed and you're picking these up for 20 cents a piece. These are the type of cards I like. So forget like cards that have value. You want to be finding cards that don't have value that somehow could have value. Hour of Reckoning in here is going to get crushed. Everything else is going to get crushed. That leads us on to the last but not least that has some interesting cards in it. However, I think the double recent reprintings are going to kill the value, and this is Glimpse of the Unthinkable. This is a card that used to have really good steady growth. In fact, this was one that I've been trying to find the right price point to get into on Iconic Masters. Thankfully, I never did. I never did target these very highly as they completely flatlined out. Here have not started to tick up, and now this is going to be something that crushes it even more. If you look back at or if you look back at this though, this was one of these casual cards that had the price structure that I really liked. However, this was pretty significant here because I don't know, yeah, there was no spoiling of it till right here, and it really didn't grow anything about. But $27 for a casual card is quite a bit when it's not that great in a bunch of, if you're looking to self-mill, there are probably better things to do in Commander. And if you're looking to single target mill someone, 10 cards isn't very good either. At that point, you're probably better off dumping in a lot of mana in something like Commander to mill everyone, or specifically one opponent, more substantial than 1/10 of their deck. So this has been a card that people have tried to get work in Modern. Occasionally it works. You'll see some mill decks. This is you'll always see a mill deck every now and again hit a 5-0 finish on MTGO, and this could be a card. Unfortunately, though, for the price value, there's really nothing else in Dimir that can hold value. We have like Aqueducts and Signets that are worth more from this particular color combination, mainly due to Pauper, as these Dimir Signet is one of the Pauper Signets that does see play, and same thing with the Aqueduct. It sees a lot more play than a lot of the other bounce lands, as blue-black is the type of deck that utilizes bounce lands a lot better than the other colors. These things I think are going to be crushed, so I think that's something that's also adding towards this total value. I mean, there's $5 or $4 right there that is added towards this value, and there's nothing else that is too attractive from this. We have Mission Briefing that is also holding a lot of the value of this is a big unknown. We've had cards like this printed in the past that allow to do very similar things. I think that this card is overrated. I don't think it is a Snapcaster Mage. I know people have said that it's very similar to we just had an uncommon out of Ixalan that did a very similar thing, that you can cast or you can return an instant or sorcery back from your graveyard to your hand. I don't believe it's instant speed. Maybe it's sorcerer speed, so maybe that's the world of difference for 2 blue mana, and I think that's going to be key. The double blue on this is a lot more hard to cast than something that is a single blue and 1 and leaves back a 2/1 body. Surveil 2, of course, is nice because it can give you a target. Again, however, it is no Snapcaster Mage. I think people are tricking themselves into thinking that it is. So, again, the big unknown of this is this even playable or not, coupled with the fact that this is already getting a reprint before it's even released, is spells Disaster for Mission Briefing to hold its value. So if I were to rank these in the sets that I think I like Boros the best for potential targets. The Dimir would be my least favorite, because even these cards that somewhat have some value, like Nightveil Spectre, these are just like really, really bulky. Sizak's Lord of Secrets just had a reprint already. Even Lazov, Circo, these are things that have gone up just because of being a mythic or low supply rare, and this is definitely going to be the supplemental product that actually destroys the value of it. So yeah, Boros is nice just because of like the staples like Lightning Helix and Boros Charm. Be looking for those type of targets when they really bottom out. So out of my picks for cards you need to be definitely watching, I like Abrupt Decay if it bottoms out. Assassin's Trophy is not 100% solidified that is going to replace Abrupt Decay. I think people are going to be surprised about either the split of Abrupt Decays and Assassin trophies, or again, it being a meta call, where sometimes Abrupt Decay will be the correct choice, sometimes Assassin trophy will be the correct choice. Other cards that have proven themselves that might bottom out, like the Legion Loyalist, the Boros Charm, the Lightning Helix, we waiting for those to bottom out sometime December, January, February, sometime around that mark, and then you'll be starting to pick those up for their cheap. So you're gonna look for when they flat out, and I mean, just go back to any sort of commander set and look. It's about 6 months, I would say, is the window, and then they start to recover. So there's some goodies in here. All these are going to be crushed because of the low MSRP, which makes it a great time to slip into them, because again, these all have $30 value. People are going to go crazy for this set. But like I said in past videos, sometimes success is bad for prices. But then of course it leads to failure. It leads to complete crash of the cards. But then that does the exact opposite. Then people have this sticky that the price isn't worth anything of this particular card, and then the demand can slowly and secretly start to creep up and stretch out the supply of it and increase the prices. So we'll be doing an overview of these, I'm sure, in the future. I apologize for kind of one of the purpose of this channel for the Rogue Market was not to be long-winded, but I think I gave a very thorough analysis of these guild kits, and hopefully this is something that you can use to your benefit. This has been Kevin with the Rogue Market. Thanks for watching.